For most of human history, the human body lay down to rest without lifting the head away from the ground. That's not a statement of deprivation. That's not a description of suffering. That's simply fact. And like most facts, we never question it contains a question worth asking. The weight of the skull pressed directly into earth, into soil that was never meant to cushion it into stone, that had no intention of being soft. The bone found what ground would give it resistant stillness, the patient refusal of the earth to yield further than it had already been pressed by time and weather. The neck did not seek softness, and the spine did not expect support. What the body expected instead was to settle, to find its own level, to stop searching and simply rest against what was there. What feels natural to us now was once absent for nearly all who lived before. Across thousands of generations, sleep happened closer to the earth, shaped more by terrain, temperature, and necessity than by comfort. And here is what matters: if something so ordinary today, so basic that we never question it, did not exist for so long, then the comfort we believe the body requires may actually be comfort the body has learned to expect. The difference is crucial. A requirement is something the body needs for basic function. A learned expectation is something the body has been trained over time to want. If something so ordinary today did not exist for so long, it quietly suggests that the body we carry may not have been formed around the habits we now depend on. It suggests instead that our habits have formed our body's understanding of what it needs. Why did 90% of human history never use a pillow? The question itself assumes pillows are natural, inevitable, required. But the history says something different. The history says, we chose this. Our ancestors chose this. And we inherited that choice without noticing we inherited it. In our time before the head finds rest, a sequence of preparations has already begun. We arrange the pillows first, one shaped to support the neck at a specific angle, sometimes a second beneath the knees. We adjust the blankets to a precise number of layers. We darken the room to a calculated level. We set the temperature. We settle into a posture that our body has learned to expect year after year in the same bed. And then only then does sleep come. The head rests in a place of its own, separate from the rest of the body, elevated and supported, almost cradled. This arrangement seems like the natural way of things. We don't question it. We can't imagine sleeping another way. But nature has a very long memory, and that memory tells a different story. To understand what we've chosen is to see our choices more clearly. Sleep, one of life's most intimate acts, also has a history. Your pillow tells a story. That story is older and younger than you might think. It's older than civilization in the sense that humans existed for most of our history without it. It's younger than you'd expect in the sense that for the vast majority of human existence, people rested their heads on the ground and slept soundly. They woke without the stiffness we expect. Their bodies didn't demand the comfort we're certain we require. They adapted. They adjusted. And in that adaptation lies something we've nearly forgotten: the body is far more flexible than we believe. This isn't an argument that you should abandon your pillow. This isn't a plea to return to sleeping on the ground. This is something quieter. It's an invitation to notice, to see that what feels necessary might be chosen, to understand that what feels natural might be recent, to recognize that the comfort we believe in so deeply is real, but it's also particular to us, to our time, to the world we've built. The moment you understand this, something shifts, not in how you sleep necessarily, but in how you understand your own life, in how you recognize the choices embedded in your everyday. in how you see that many things we take for granted as nature are actually culture. And once you see that you can't unsee it, long before crafted surfaces and controlled environments, the human body came to rest directly upon the ground, not as a decision guided by comfort, but as a continuation of movement that gradually slowed and then settled into stillness. The earth was not something separate from sleep, but part of the same continuous experience, not something the body was placed upon, but something the body was woven into through repetition and time. Soil, grass, packed dirt, stone or layers of fallen leaves formed the surface where the body lay, and each of these carried its own texture, its own firmness, and its own temperature. None of them were designed to receive the body, and yet the body learned to rest upon them without expectation that they should change. Instead, the human form adjusted itself in quiet and subtle ways, redistributing weight, shifting pressure points, and allowing muscles to release tension once a stable position was found. A bed of leaves, when fresh, pressed down under weight like 1,000 small hands releasing their grip. They crackled at first contact, a sound that belonged to the forest itself, then compressed into a slight impression. The smell they released rose with the warmth of a resting body, decay richness, the deep earthiness of returning things. In the morning, that impression would slowly spring back, as if the earth itself was forgetting the weight that had pressed into it. Leaves taught the body about impermanence, about gentle resistance, about nature's own responsiveness. They were never the same twice, never perfectly arranged, but always adequate. The sleeping person learned that imperfection was not a problem to solve. It was simply the texture of rest in this place, this season, this moment. Grass, whether dried from summer or still holding autumn moisture, bent and wove around the head like living fingers. It was imperfect, scratching sometimes along the cheekbone, brushing against the ear. But this imperfection meant something. It meant the sleeping place was responsive, alive, changing with the seasons. No two nights felt identical because the grass was never identical. Moisture changed it, temperature changed it, the weight of the body changed it. And the body sleeping in this variability learned flexibility. The brain didn't have to process perfect sleep conditions. It had to process, this is how it is tonight, and from that acceptance came rest. Packed earth, hard-packed dirt, smoothed by countless footfalls over years and seasons, offered firmness that did not give. Here the body did not sink, it rested. The skull might find a slight indentation worn by rain, or a small hollow where water had collected. These were not designed, they simply existed as the earth existed, yet they seemed oddly perfect, as if the earth itself was learning slowly how to hold sleeping bodies. This hard surface taught something different. It taught stability through use, time-created comfort, the principle that repeated contact shapes surfaces into forms that serve. Stone was different still. Cold, unyielding, it remained itself. A head rested on stone, not because it was comfortable, but because when everything else around was hard, the body simply adapted. It might rest on the upper arm turned slightly to one side, or on a bundle of gathered plant matter placed just enough to reduce the direct weight. This was not failure. This was how the body negotiated with a world that didn't bend to accommodate it. This taught negotiation creativity, the capacity to rest without comfort and still sleep deeply. Each of these arrangements was particular to its place, yet each operated on the same principle: the body would adapt to the ground, not the ground to the body. There was no attempt to standardize the sleeping surface, to make it uniform across seasons or places. Instead, there was an acceptance that every night brought slightly different conditions, and the body in its flexibility, its adaptability, its capacity to find stillness despite imperfection was the one thing that could consistently meet these variations. The boundary between the human body and the earth remained minimal. There was little physical distance between where a person lived and where they rested, and no clear division between the environment and the act of sleep. Lying down did not require preparation in the way it often does now. There was no need to arrange bedding, to adjust layers, or to place an object beneath the head to achieve a specific posture. The transition into rest was direct, shaped by immediate conditions and by the body's ability to adapt to them. When viewed across the long span of early human existence, this pattern appears not as a limitation, but as the foundation from which all later sleeping habits emerged. Even when simple materials such as animal skins, grasses, or leaves were gathered and placed beneath the body, they did not function as separate structures designed to elevate or isolate the head. They remained part of the same surface, softening contact, but not altering the overall relationship between the body and the ground. The neck continued to align naturally with the spine, without the introduction of an external support that would change its angle. In this way, sleep remained closely connected to the natural form of the human body and the physical realities of the environment. There was no expectation of comfort as it is understood today, only the need for stability, safety, and the ability to remain at rest for extended periods. Over time, this repeated interaction between body and ground formed a consistent pattern, one that did not rely on added objects or constructed surfaces. The earth in all its variations served as the first and most constant place of rest, shaping how humans slept long before the idea of lifting the head above the ground became part of everyday life. The human body pressing against the earth night after night, and the earth itself, these were not separate entities in a relationship requiring mediation. They were continuous. The sleeper and the ground were engaged in a quiet conversation, a negotiation that had been happening for tens of thousands of years. The body learned the ground's language, the ground learned the body's weight, and in that mutual learning sleep became possible. As the body lowered itself toward the ground, night after night, a quiet pattern began to repeat. Not through instruction, but through simple physical response. The shape of the land, the firmness beneath, and the weight of the body created a set of conditions that did not change quickly. And so the body did not need to search for new solutions each time it came to rest. Instead, it relied on small adjustments that could be made almost without awareness. Subtle shifts that distributed pressure across the shoulders, back and hips until a stable position emerged. The shoulders would settle first, offering the largest surface area for contact. Then the back, following the natural curve of the spine. Finally, the head would follow, finding a point of contact that allowed the neck to remain neither strained nor fully unsupported. In the absence of a separate object placed beneath the head, the position of the neck depended entirely on how the rest of the body aligned itself with the surface. This meant that sleep began not at the head, but across the entire form as a distributed balance rather than a single point of support. When the ground was firm, the body often adjusted by slightly bending the limbs or turning to one side, creating a natural curve that reduced pressure along the spine. When the surface was softer, such as a layer of leaves or grass, the body sank just enough to create a shallow impression, and within that impression the head found its place without needing elevation. These interactions were shaped by gravity and by the physical limits of joints and muscles, not by an intention to create comfort in the modern sense. The body was simply solving an equation: how to rest safely on this surface with these materials. Across long stretches of time, repeated contact with the ground may have encouraged flexibility and postural strength rather than reliance on a fixed sleeping position. The body could shift during the night, rolling or turning in response to pressure, temperature, or subtle discomfort, and each new position would again rely on the same principle: the ground remains constant and the body adapts. This continuous adjustment did not interrupt rest, but instead allowed it to be maintained as small movements prevented strain from building in one place for too long. In this way, the absence of a pillow did not leave the head unsupported, but instead required the entire body to participate in maintaining alignment. Stability came not from elevation, but from distribution, from the way different parts of the body shared contact with the surface beneath them. A person could sleep deeply, experiencing real rest, not despite the lack of cushioning, but because they had been trained from childhood in the capacity to adapt. But sleep was not a fixed pose. The body that could not elevate its head was a body that could move in other ways. Through the night, as pressure points slowly accumulated sensitivity, as temperature shifted with the deepening of darkness, or the approach of dawn, as dreams reached for unconscious memories and made the muscles twitch, the body performed a slow choreography of adjustment. It was not the dramatic rolling from side to side that modern sleepers do. It was subtler. A hip weighted beyond its comfort would gradually shift. Shoulders would rotate slightly, redistributing pressure like water, finding a new level. The head would turn just enough that a different part of the skull met the ground. These were not conscious actions. The sleeping mind did not command them. Instead, discomfort itself was the signal. The absence of numbness, the slow return of sensation to a compressed limb, the temperature change as the body's own heat redistributed these triggered movement. The body was reading its own signals and responding in real time, even while asleep. This constant unconscious adjustment had a consequence. Sleep became a practice of adaptation rather than a destination reached and then held. Unlike modern sleep, which often aims for stillness and consistency, ancient sleep was a process of continuous fine-tuning. The sleeper was not trying to achieve perfect rest. The sleeper was simply, moment by moment, allowing the body to keep adjusting until the next wave of sleep could deepen. This required a particular kind of flexibility, not just physical, but neurological. The brain had to be trained to find rest in variability. Modern sleep research confirms what history suggests. A body will adapt to what it repeatedly encounters. Place it on the ground night after night for thousands of years, and the skeleton will gradually become more flexible. The musculature will develop patterns of distribution that work well in that configuration. The nervous system will learn to find rest without elevation. Place that same body, the same species, the same basic equipment in a climate-controlled room with a soft pillow, and over decades it will adapt to that too. The modern body's insistence on a pillow is not proof that the ancient body needed one. It is proof that bodies are supremely adaptable. We have adapted to pillows not because they are necessary, but because we have been practicing them. For generations now, children grow up with pillows. Their bodies learn to expect that support. Their spines develop in relationship to that height. Their necks become accustomed to that specific angle. By the time they reach adulthood, their bodies have been so thoroughly trained that sleeping without a pillow feels impossible. But impossible is not the same as impossible. It's just trained to expect one thing so completely that alternatives seem unthinkable. The ancient flexibility came from a different kind of training. From infancy, the human body was trained to find rest in variable conditions, to make micro-adjustments, to read discomfort as information rather than as a problem, to trust in its own capacity to adapt. This training created a different kind of capacity, not comfort in the modern sense, but resilience. The ability to sleep despite imperfection, the ability to rest in variable conditions, the ability to find stillness in a world that didn't bend to accommodate you. Modern research into sleep shows something interesting. People who sleep without pillows for a few weeks experience an adjustment period, discomfort, difficulty falling asleep, stiffness upon waking. But this discomfort decreases rapidly. Within 4 to 6 weeks, bodies that have been trained on pillows for years begin to readapt. Sleep quality actually improves. The initial difficulty wasn't because pillows are necessary. It was because the body was unlearning old training and learning new patterns. Once the new training takes hold, rest comes. This suggests that what feels necessary might simply be what is practiced. The body has no fixed needs in this regard. The body has flexible needs that shift based on what it's been trained to expect. We have mistaken practice for nature. We have taken our own arrangements, our soft mattresses, our elevated heads, our climate-controlled rooms, and convinced ourselves that these are not merely our way, but the body's way. We have built a world so specific to modern comfort that we have lost sight of the body's capacity to rest in other ways. What we can only guess at is the internal experience of this sleeping body. Did it dream? If so, what did it dream of? Not of pillows, certainly, for the mind dreams of what it knows. It dreamed of the hunt, perhaps, or the gathering, or the patterns of stars. Did the sleeping mind perceive the ground beneath it as a problem to be solved, or simply as the given world against which the body pressed? We cannot know, but we can observe something important. The person who slept this way did not wake with the sensation of deprivation. The neck was not strained from the lack of cushioning. The back was not twisted in pain. There was an adjustment required. Yes, a flexibility of expectation, a willingness to be uncomfortable in ways that modern bodies have largely lost. But the adjustment was possible. The adaptation was complete. Which means that when we look at a pillow today and feel certain that we could not sleep without it, we are not necessarily reporting a fact about the body's needs. We may be reporting a fact about our own specific modern learned expectations. The consciousness of ancient sleep was different from modern consciousness about sleep. For us, sleep has become something to optimize, something that can be improved through better materials, better design, better planning. We ask, did I sleep enough? Was my sleep restful? Why can't I sleep without these conditions? These questions reveal a modern anxiety about sleep itself. We have made sleep into a problem that requires solving. The ancient consciousness might have been different. Sleep was perhaps seen as a natural rhythm, not as an escape from waking. Not something to be anxious about, but something that happened when the body was tired. Sleep was not a condition to be optimized, but a phase of existence, one of the several that made up a day. There was less self-monitoring, less worry about sleep quality, less consciousness about sleep itself. Paradoxically, this lack of consciousness might have enabled better sleep. Much of modern sleep difficulty is psychological. Anxiety about sleep disrupts sleep. Worry about position disrupts rest. Consciousness about sleep prevents sleep. The ancient consciousness was different. Less self-monitoring, more trust in the body's wisdom. This is partly why ancient peoples could sleep despite what we would consider impossible conditions. Their minds were not fighting their bodies. Their expectations were not warring with their reality. They simply rested when tired and returned to waking when the body was ready. Sleep happened. What we can infer from evidence is telling. Archaeological evidence from burial sites shows preferred sleeping positions. Remains show no widespread pattern of chronic pain related to ground sleeping. Tools and artifacts suggest comfort considerations. Furs were gathered, materials were arranged, but they also suggest acceptance of imperfection. Headrests, when they appeared gradually. If sleep on the ground was a crisis, if the body suffered chronically from lack of cushioning, it would have been solved urgently. Instead, it was refined, slowly, suggesting it was not solving an emergency, but making a gradual improvement to an already functional system. From comparative studies, we learn that modern people sleeping on ground adapt much faster than expected. Discomfort decreases rapidly. Sleep quality actually improves within weeks. This suggests that ancient adaptation would have been complete. The body is remarkable in its flexibility. Modern pain expectations often have a psychological component. When we expect pain, we're more likely to experience it. When we expect to sleep poorly without our comfort items, we're more likely to sleep poorly. But the body, given time, often adapts. There is a quality to the night that is difficult to name. The slowness of it, the way time moves differently in darkness, the way the body's concerns simplify when the waking world is hidden. For ancient sleepers, this darkness was complete. There was no artificial light, no screens glowing in the night, no digital time constantly measured. The darkness was total, and in that totality, something shifted. The mind released its grip on time and consequence. The body simply was. We can imagine, though we cannot truly know, that the experience of settling into sleep was quieter then. Not the anxious settling we sometimes do, worried about whether sleep will come, but a simple laying down, a simple releasing of the day, a simple allowing of the body to do what it does when tired. The breath would slow, the mind would drift toward the dream state without the barrier of worry. The muscles trained in flexibility would find the position that worked for this night, this place, this ground, and then sleep would come. In the middle of the night there was movement, but not the frustrated movement of someone trying to get comfortable, the intelligent movement of a body responding to its own signals, a repositioning that was automatic, unconscious part of the sleep itself, rather than an interruption to it. The body would shift, the position would change, and sleep would continue unbroken because the mind was not evaluating comfort. The mind was simply dreaming. In the hours before waking, as the light began to change, the body would begin its own preparation. Not a dramatic waking, but a gradual lightening of sleep. The nervous system would begin to activate, the muscles would begin to warm, and when the eyes opened, there would be no grogginess from an uncomfortable position, no stiffness from an insufficient pillow. Just the simple return to waking. What the ancient body remembered about sleep was different from what modern bodies remember. The ancient body remembered that rest was possible despite imperfection, that the ground was adequate, that the body could adjust, that sleep would come if you allowed it, that waking would come when it was time. These are profound rememberings. They suggest a kind of confidence in the body's own wisdom that we have largely lost. The uniformity of this ancient sleep was not absolute. Across different lands and different peoples, the specific adaptation varied. In the high plateaus where temperature dropped dramatically at night, peoples developed particular practices of sleeping. They were not driven by the same needs as those in tropical regions. Instead, each adaptation was a response to specific environmental conditions. This shows a crucial principle: humans do not have one way of sleeping. Humans have many ways, and each way emerges in response to particular circumstances. In the high plateaus, the Andes, the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, where temperature plummeted after sunset and wind could be severe protective shelter, was crucial. The ground itself was cold. Direct contact with ground meant heat loss from the body. The solution was not a pillow, but a different posture. Peoples of these regions curled tightly for sleep, knees drawn toward chest, arms wrapped around torso, making the body smaller, reducing the surface area exposed to cold. The head rested on an arm or on gathered materials, on blankets or furs. The position itself, compact, inward-folded, reduced heat loss. Multiple people slept close together, sharing body heat. The practice was not about comfort, but about survival. Yet within this survival practice, sleep happened. The body adapted to the compact position. The muscles learned to rest in that curl. The spine, flexible, accommodated the fold. And sleep came deep and necessary because the body needed it, and the mind had no better option. This compact position didn't require a pillow. The head naturally rested on the arm or on gathered clothing. The neck maintained relatively neutral alignment. Even in extreme cold, the body found rest. In warmer climates near coasts and rivers where the ground stayed damp, a different solution emerged. Sleeping platforms were elevated slightly above the earth, woven from plant materials available locally, palm fronds, reeds, woven grasses, bamboo, where available. The elevation wasn't high, the body remained close to the ground, but height provided practical benefits. It protected from ground moisture. It allowed water to drain beneath rather than pooling. It provided some protection from insects and small creatures. But fundamentally, it remained a ground-based system. The platform was simple, often uneven, never padded with soft materials. People lay on these elevated platforms in looser positions than on cold highlands. The climate allowed spread-out posture. The body could rest on back or side without the compact curl necessary for warmth. The head rested on arm or on small bundles of materials. No separate elevation of the head was needed, yet rest happened. Sleep came. The adaptation was different from mountain peoples, but the principle was the same. The body adjusted to the conditions available, and sleep emerged from that adjustment. In dense forests where the ground was uneven with roots and natural features, sleeping arrangements incorporated the landscape itself rather than modifying it. A sleeper might rest in the depression of ancient tree roots, or on a slight rise that provided natural drainage. Gathered materials were arranged following contours rather than creating a uniform surface. The forest floor was soft with accumulated leaves, moss, organic matter that provided some cushioning naturally. The body was not placed upon the earth. It was placed into the earth, into the contours that had been shaped by water time and the accumulated weight of other living things. This practice required knowledge, where to sleep for safety, drainage, and some protection from nocturnal creatures, how to prepare the area, which materials to gather, how to recognize the right spot. This was learned knowledge passed down through generations, but no pillow was part of this knowledge. Instead, there was understanding of how to work with landscape, how to read the ground, how to place the body where it fit. The comfort that emerged from ground sleeping in forest came from this integration from working with place rather than against it. In open plains, African savanna, American plains, Central Asian steppes, there were no natural landscape features to work with, no forest materials available. Space and exposure created different conditions. Often sleeping happened near fire, which provided warmth and light and some protection. The grass itself could be flattened or gathered. The body created its own indentation in the ground, pressing the grass down. Over seasons and years, repeated sleeping spots became slightly worn. Slight depressions marked where the group regularly slept. Without landscape features, without abundant soft materials, the body had to become the tool of comfort creation. The body had to be supremely flexible. There was no way to enhance comfort through location choice. There was no way to gather protective materials. The body itself had to adapt completely to open ground. This required and produced a particular kind of resilience. The body learned to rest without aids or enhancements, depending entirely on its own capacity. This created a different kind of strength, not physical strength, but a strength of adaptation, of trust, of the body's own wisdom. Despite vastly different climates and landscapes, despite different tools and available materials, despite different challenges and dangers, The same principle worked everywhere. The body would adapt to the ground. No expectation of cushioning. All managed through flexibility, adaptation, acceptance. All worked for millennia. All produced rest. What is remarkable is that these were not uniform practices imposed across populations. They were diverse responses to particular conditions. What is equally remarkable is that across all this diversity, pillows did not emerge. The principle did not need a pillow. The body could rest without it sleep deeply, without it wake refreshed, without it. The practice was not universal, but it was widespread and successful. It worked because the body, given no alternative and no expectation of one, learned to rest on the ground. The fact that different peoples in different places, facing different conditions, all managed ground sleeping without pillows suggests something important. The need for a pillow is not universal or biological. It's particular and learned. When conditions change, when materials become available, when cultural values shift, then pillows appear. But they appear not because the body suddenly needed them, they appear because the culture suddenly wanted them. The reason for this distinction will become clear as we trace the history. If we trace the history of the pillow itself, the story unfolds gradually. It is not a sudden discovery of what the body always needed. It is a slow invention of responses to changing conditions. The earliest forms of elevation appeared not as the soft, cushioned objects we know, but as stone headrests found in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. These were carved stone, sometimes curved slightly, to accommodate the head shape, but not soft, not yielding. They were not an attempt to create comfort. They were practical. They elevated the head above ground animals, above moisture, above dust. These stone headrests, when they appeared in specific contexts, in settled societies, in buildings with stone floors. When humans moved from sleeping on earth outdoors to sleeping on stone floors indoors, a practical problem arose. Stone floors were cold. They conducted heat away from the body. Direct head contact meant rapid heat loss from the head where body heat is critical. The headrest solved this specific problem. It elevated the head above the coldest part of the stone floor. It wasn't discovered as a solution to a problem the body had always had. It was invented as a response to a specific environmental change. But this evolution was not universal. Many peoples around the world continued sleeping as their ancestors had for thousands of additional years. In regions where this architectural shift didn't happen, where people remained closer to the ground, where building styles didn't change, the headrest was not needed. The pillow was not invented as a solution to a universal problem. It was invented as a response to particular conditions in particular places. Over time, as some societies began using headrests, the idea spread. Other cultures adopted or adapted it, but this happened slowly. As societies became more organized and materials became more available, stone supports evolved. Wooden frames were introduced in some cultures. These frames were sometimes curved, sometimes flat, designed to accommodate the head. In some places, these wooden supports began to be wrapped with soft materials, cloth plant fibers, eventually down or animal hair. This is when the pillow, as we recognize it, began to emerge. But this too was gradual. It took centuries. And it was never universal. The transition happened alongside other changes. As people moved indoors more permanently, as settlements became more fixed, as bedding became a constructed thing rather than gathered materials, the pillow evolved. From stone to wood to cushioned surfaces, from practical object to comfort item, from solving specific problem to becoming assumed necessity. But the timeline is important. For most of human history, pillows did not exist. Then they existed, but only in certain places. Then they existed as luxury items. Only in the last 2 centuries did they become standard. When materials allowed cloth that could be mass-produced down, that could be harvested at scale foam, that could be manufactured, the pillow became democratized. What was once luxury became common. What was once rare became expected. Within 200 years, what had been absent for 90% of human history became assumed. This is not a long time, not evolutionarily, not even historically. This is a cultural shift, not a biological imperative. The philosophical shift that accompanied this material change is crucial to understand. As pillows became available, sleep began to be understood as something that could be improved. Not just sleep itself, but comfort during sleep. The idea emerged that sleep could be optimized, that the right pillow would produce better sleep, that there was a right way to support the head. This was a cultural shift. It wasn't a discovery of biological truth. It was a choice to make sleep into something, to optimize something, to improve something, to engineer. With industrialization came marketing, sleep better with our pillow. The perfect pillow for perfect rest. The pillow went from rare to common to essential in the story we tell about good sleep. Marketing created expectation. Expectation created demand. Demand created industry. And the industry, once established, reinforced the narrative: sleep requires a good pillow. Your body needs support. You cannot rest without proper cushioning. Buy our pillow. But before this narrative existed, people slept. Without marketing, without expectation, without anxiety about whether they were sleeping right, the ancient sleeper did not lie awake worrying about neck support. The medieval person did not feel they couldn't rest without the right pillow. The pillow was absent, and sleep happened anyway. Once the pillow was invented and then marketed and then normalized, a different story emerged. Now, it's nearly impossible to sleep without one, not because our bodies changed, but because our expectations changed and our bodies learned to meet those expectations. The current state of the pillow is one of the complete normalization. For most modern people, the pillow is unquestioned. It's not seen as a choice, but as a basic fact of sleep. Most people assume they couldn't sleep without one. Most people have never tried. Most people believe their body requires it. This is the power of habituation combined with effective marketing. What started as a practical solution to a specific problem became a cultural assumption, and we living within that assumption mistake it for nature. The history of the pillow, then, is not a march of progress toward correct sleep. It's a story of changing material conditions, changing aesthetic values, changing ideas about the body, and changing ideas about comfort. It's a story of choices made in particular places at particular times. Some of those choices had benefits: relief from certain physical conditions, consistency and stability, greater comfort for some people. But they also had costs which become visible only when we step back and look at the whole story. What we learn from this history is that pillow is recent. What we learn is that it solves particular problems created by other modern choices: stone floors, buildings, artificial light that extends activity into night, a work culture that tires people at specific times. Without these other modern arrangements, the pillow might not be necessary. With these arrangements, the pillow is helpful. But helpful is different from necessary. And yet, we've come to believe it's necessary. We've mistaken a recent habit for an eternal need. This is not a condemnation of modern comfort. Comfort has worth, ease has worth, rest has worth. These are real goods. For many modern people, pillows help them sleep better. For people with certain conditions, pillows can be genuinely necessary. For some, life improved significantly by having access to comfortable sleep support. We need to acknowledge this clearly. We need to honor the real benefits without pretending they're the only thing that matters. Neck support from a good pillow can reduce strain for people with certain body types. It can help those with particular physical conditions, Some people sleep more deeply with proper support. Some people experience relief from chronic tension. These are legitimate improvements. This is not dismissible. But at the same time, we need to understand what else happened when the pillow became necessary. What capacities were trained away? What flexibility was lost? What resilience faded? The most obvious loss is flexibility. The ancient body was trained from childhood to sleep in variable conditions, to make micro-adjustments, to find comfort in imperfection, to trust in its own capacity to adapt. The modern body is trained to sleep in consistent conditions. Same pillow, same bed, same room temperature, same darkness, same routine. This consistency allows deep, reliable sleep, but it creates vulnerability. The body that cannot sleep without consistency has lost the capacity to sleep with variation. When the modern person must sleep somewhere different, on a train, in a strange bed, on a couch, in the heat, the whole system breaks down. Sleep becomes impossible. Anxiety increases. The person lies awake, uncomfortable, unable to adapt. They've lost a skill their ancestors possessed, not a skill they had to actively learn, but a capacity that comes from training in variation from childhood. If you grow up sleeping in different positions, on different surfaces, in different conditions, your body learns to sleep anywhere. If you grow up sleeping in one specific way, in one specific setup, your body loses that capacity. The second loss is more subtle. It's the loss of bodily awareness. Ancient sleep required constant body awareness. The sleeper was always partially monitoring themselves, sensing pressure points, responding to discomfort, making micro-adjustments. The body participated actively in the process of finding and maintaining rest. Modern sleep allows loss of awareness. The pillow does the work, the mattress does the work. The body can be unconscious. This is relaxing, but it creates a different kind of disconnection. We lose touch with our bodies when we don't have to actively maintain comfort. We stop listening to the subtle signals. We stop responding to pressure points. We stop understanding our own physical needs. The body becomes something that happens to us rather than something we actively maintain. For modern sleepers anxious about their bodies, this disconnection can become deeper. We worry about sleep without actually staying aware during sleep. We create anxiety about a process we're no longer paying attention to. The third loss is integration with environment. Ancient sleep was connected to place. You slept responding to temperature, terrain, weather. Your body maintained awareness of environment even while sleeping. Modern sleep is separated from environment. Dark room isolates from darkness. Temperature control removes the experience of temperature. Soundproofing removes the experience of sound. The body is removed from direct contact with the natural world. Sleep becomes a removed private act rather than an integrated part of living in place. This separation has consequences. We lose information. We stop sensing seasonal changes. We stop responding to environmental signals. We become less responsive to nature because we're less in contact with it. Our bodies become less adaptive to environmental change. In a climate-controlled room, the body doesn't practice adapting to temperature variation. So when it must during travel, in heat waves, in power outages, the body doesn't know how. This kind of disconnection from environment has broader implications beyond sleep. There is a psychological shift as well. Sleep became something to optimize, something that could be improved through buying the right products, something that could go wrong and need fixing. This created anxiety about sleep. The modern person lies in bed wondering if they'll sleep enough, worrying about whether conditions are optimal, checking whether they're in the right position. This consciousness about sleep undermines sleep itself. The person who lies awake worrying about sleep will sleep poorly. The person who simply rests will sleep well. We've built a world so specific to modern comfort that we've trained ourselves to be fragile in other conditions. We've made sleep dependent on particular objects and conditions. We've created situations where we need these things to function. And then we experience anxiety about having these things. What if the pillow wears out? What if we travel somewhere where the right pillow isn't available? What if conditions change? This is a kind of self-made vulnerability, yet there are benefits. The comfort itself is a genuine benefit. Many people do sleep better with pillows. Many people experience relief. Many people live better because sleep is easier. Consistency and predictability have value. For people with back problems, neck issues, sleep apnea, or other conditions, the pillow is genuinely helpful. For many others, it simply feels better. These benefits are real. We should not deny them. The trade-off is real as well. We traded flexibility for comfort. We traded adaptability for consistency. We traded resilience for ease. We traded integration with environment for isolation from it. We traded body awareness for unconscious comfort. These are not small trades, but they are trades we made mostly without knowing we were making them. We inherited them. Our parents used pillows. We learned to sleep on pillows. Our bodies adapted, and we mistake this adaptation for nature. What we might learn from understanding these trades is not that we should make different choices, but that we should make our choices knowing what they involve. We can use pillows and enjoy that comfort while understanding that we've chosen consistency over flexibility. We can value reliability while recognizing we've lost adaptability. We can appreciate ease while naming what we've traded for it. The question is not whether modern sleep is better or worse. It's different. It has different benefits and different costs. Understanding both allows us to live with more awareness, to choose our habits consciously rather than simply inheriting them, to recognize that what we do is chosen, not inevitable. And from that recognition comes a different kind of freedom. When you lie down at night to night, and every night a sequence of actions happens, you arrange the pillows, perhaps just one, perhaps more. You adjust the blankets to the number of layers that feels right. You set the temperature or open a window. You dim the light or turn it off completely. You settle into a position you've repeated thousands of times before. And then you lie there, waiting for sleep. Your head rests on the pillow. You don't think about how it's positioned. You don't wonder if your neck is at the right angle. You don't question whether this is the right way to sleep. The support feels familiar. The comfort feels expected, almost necessary. Within minutes, your body begins to relax. Your thoughts slow. Your breathing deepens. Rest begins. You don't think about this. You don't analyze it. You don't question it. The comfort feels natural, inevitable, necessary. This is just how sleep happens. This is how your body works. You cannot imagine sleeping another way. You've tried sleeping without a pillow, maybe for a night in an uncomfortable hotel or on a camping trip, and it was awful. Stiff neck. Poor sleep. You were right to return to your pillow. Your body needs this. This is fact. But beneath all this sits an assumption so deep you don't see it as assumption. You assume your body needs this pillow. You assume sleep requires this cushioning. You assume you couldn't sleep without this. This assumption is so fundamental it feels like nature, like biology, like truth. But what if it's not? What if it's habit? What if it's training? What if the only reason you believe you can't sleep without a pillow is because you've been trained since childhood to expect one? Sit with that question for a moment. Not to demand you change anything, not to make you feel bad about your pillow, but just to sit with the question. What if your body doesn't actually need this? What if your body has simply learned to expect it? What if you've trained your body so thoroughly that it has forgotten how to sleep another way, to know that the nightly ritual you perform The arranging of pillows, the adjustments of temperature, the seeking of darkness is not the expression of unchanging human nature, but the expression of a particular moment in history. This is quietly disturbing. Not devastating, not cause for crisis, but unsettling. Like looking at something familiar and suddenly seeing it differently. The pillow looks the same, but now you know it's a choice. A particular arrangement made by people you'll never know, chosen for reasons you can trace through history, repeated until it became habit, and now so embedded that it feels like necessity. You cannot unknow this. Once you understand that your assumptions are learned, you can't fully return to innocence. You can't fully believe again that the way you sleep is just nature. But this loss of innocence is not bad. It's awareness. It's the beginning of understanding your own life. When you lie down tonight with this new awareness, what will change? Nothing, perhaps. Everything, perhaps. The pillow will still feel comfortable. Your body will still expect the support. You will likely still sleep as you always do. But now you will do it knowing this is a choice. Knowing this is a particular arrangement of the world. Knowing your body could do otherwise. This knowledge shifts everything. Your gratitude might deepen. You appreciate the comfort, more understanding what's been arranged to create it. All the labor, all the innovation, that created this pillow, this night, this rest. Generations before you made choices that led to this moment. You inherit that comfort. You can feel grateful for it without believing it's necessary. And something else shifts. You notice your body settling. You notice the adjustment your body makes, finding the position where the pillow fits right. You notice the moment when adjustment stops and rest begins. You realize your body could make other adjustments, could adapt to other positions, could do what ancient bodies did. Not that you have to, just that you could. There's a paradox here. Your body is the same body. Your pillow is the same pillow. Everything is the same. But something has shifted. Understanding makes everything deeper. Not judgment, but depth. Not change, but awareness. You are awake in your own life in a way you weren't before. When sleep comes, and it will come just the same, or perhaps slightly deeper, because you're not anxious, you rest, knowing what you're resting on, knowing why it works, knowing it works because you've learned it works, not because you need it, but because you've chosen it, not consciously perhaps, not recently, but in the deeper choices that shaped your life, your body, your expectations. This moment when understanding arrives is the quiet revolution. Not dramatic, not urgent, not demanding change, but shifting something fundamental in how you see your own existence. You are not simply living, you are seeing yourself live. You are understanding the choices embedded in your everyday. You are waking up to the fact that much of what you thought was nature is actually culture. And once you see that about sleep, you begin to see it about everything. The most immediate lesson is this: your body is more resilient than you assume. Not that you should immediately abandon your pillow to test this, but knowing that the capacity exists matters. It relieves a certain anxiety. It suggests that you're not as fragile as modern culture tells you. If you ever find yourself in a situation that requires sleeping without your comfortable setup, traveling, camping emergency, you now know something your conscious mind might not have remembered. You can do this. Your body can adapt. It will be uncomfortable at first. The first night might be difficult. But within days, your body will adjust. Your muscles will remember older training. Your nervous system will find ways to rest. You don't need perfect conditions to sleep. This knowledge itself has value. Not because you'll use it constantly, but because you'll face situations that require it. When you travel, when you must adapt, when circumstances demand flexibility. Knowing you can adapt relieves the anxiety. The anxiety itself often disrupts sleep more than the actual discomfort. Remove the anxiety that says I can't sleep in these conditions and sleep becomes more possible. The deeper lesson is about habit as history. Many things we believe are needs are actually habits. We believe the body needs certain things because we've been trained since birth to expect them. But understanding this about sleep teaches us about all our habits. Every day we make choices, we adopt practices, we repeat them until they feel necessary. But they started as choices. This is true of sleep routines, work schedules, eating patterns, everything. Understanding that pillows are habit rather than nature teaches us to look at other habits with new eyes. What other assumptions are we walking around with? What other practices feel necessary but are actually chosen? What other arrangements of life could be different? Not saying we should change everything, but seeing things as chosen rather than necessary changes our relationship to everything. In our work lives, we've structured days around hours of sitting. We believe this is necessary. But most of human history didn't sit in offices for 8 hours. That's a choice, a recent one. With consequences, we've constructed eating patterns around convenience foods and restaurant meals. We believe this is necessary, but cooking was once central to life. We've created commute patterns and traffic and separation of work from home. We believe this is just how the world is, but it's all chosen. None of this means you should change everything, but understanding that these are choices allows you to evaluate them more consciously, to ask, do I want this? What does it cost me? What am I gaining and what am I losing? Can I modify this? Can I choose differently? This is the deeper value of understanding pillow as habit. It teaches us to see our own lives as made of choices that can be examined and potentially remade. The comfort question is worth sitting with for a moment. Comfort is real. Comfort matters. Ease and relief are valuable. But understanding comfort as choice rather than necessity allows you to have comfort without anxiety. You can enjoy your pillow without the desperation of believing you can't live without it. You can have comfort and also know that you could survive without it. This paradoxically makes the comfort better. You're choosing it. You're not addicted to it. You're not dependent on it. You're simply preferring it. There's wisdom in this distinction. When you want something freely chosen, you enjoy it more fully. When you believe you need something, you experience anxiety about it. You worry about maintaining it. You fear losing it. But when you know you could live without it and you choose it anyway, the whole relationship changes. You can appreciate comfort without being controlled by it. The question of flexibility versus consistency deserves attention too. Modern sleep culture often creates anxiety about perfect conditions. The search for the perfect pillow, the perfect mattress, the perfect room temperature, the perfect darkness. And in that search, sleep eludes us. Because sleep doesn't come from perfect conditions. Sleep comes from letting go, from not trying so hard, from accepting what is and resting within it. Yet consistent conditions do help sleep come more reliably. The trade-off is real. Consistency makes sleep easier, but it also makes you more dependent on that consistency. This isn't necessarily wrong. Many people benefit from reliable sleep. But understanding the trade allows you to make the choice with eyes open. You're choosing stability over flexibility. You're choosing reliability over resilience. These might be good choices for you, but they are choices. What we might learn finally is something about trusting our own lives, about seeing what we do about living consciously in our own existence. This isn't mystical, it's practical. The more you understand about how your own patterns work, the more you can work with them intentionally. You can use your habits rather than being used by them. You can see your own life rather than sleepwalking through it. Every time you recognize that something you thought was necessary is actually chosen, you gain power. Not the power to change everything, but the power to choose consciously. And that power exercised again and again in small ways in the details of how we live is revolutionary. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet sense, the sense of waking up to your own life, of seeing what you do, of choosing it. And from that choice, that awareness, that consciousness comes a kind of freedom. This isn't ultimately about pillows. Pillows are just the way in. The real question is bigger. It's this: how many of the things we believe our needs are actually learned expectations? How many of the arrangements we live within are choices we didn't consciously make? How much of what we take for granted as nature is actually culture? One object. The pillow reveals a larger pattern. This pattern is everywhere. We inherit arrangements made by others. We live in them long enough, they feel natural. We forget they were choices. We mistake them for nature. We build our lives around them. We teach our children that this is just how things are. And the arrangement continues, strengthened by repetition, until it feels inevitable. This happens with sleep. It happens with work. It happens with food. It happens with family. It happens with almost everything. We inherit structures and patterns. We live them out. They become who we are. And we forget that once someone chose these arrangements, once they were different, once there were alternatives, once if we had lived in a different time or place, everything could have been different. The line between nature and habit is far thinner than we usually assume. Bodies are not fixed in their needs. Needs are not universal. What is necessary depends on what has been practiced. What feels right depends on what is familiar. This has been true for pillows. This is true for everything else too. Sleep could be organized completely differently. In some cultures, sleep is polyphasic, multiple short sleeping periods throughout the day, rather than one long night's sleep. In some cultures, sleep is communal families sleeping together. In some cultures, sleep happens at different times, some sleeping while others work. None of these is wrong. They're just different responses to different needs and values. Yet modern culture assumes a particular sleep pattern, 8 hours at night alone, or with a partner in a private bedroom, is natural and necessary. It's not. It's a choice. Work could be organized differently. The 8-hour workday is not ancient. It's not biological. It's a choice made by labor movements around the Industrial Revolution, enforced by economic systems, normalized by generations of repetition. Yet we speak of it as if it's inevitable, as if the human body naturally works 8 hours a day. In reality, humans can work in many different patterns. Some can work intensely for short periods. Some can work moderately for long periods. Some can work sporadically. But we've chosen one pattern and acted as if it's universal. Food could be organized differently. The 3-meal-a-day pattern is not ancient. The separation of cooking from eating, buying prepared food, is recent. The availability of food year-round, regardless of season, is extremely recent. The focus on convenience over flavor is chosen. Yet we treat these as if they're inevitable, as if this is just how humans eat. In reality, humans have eaten in countless different patterns. Family could be organized differently. The nuclear family, 2 parents and children living alone, is not ancient. It's not biological. It's a specific arrangement that emerged with industrialization. Previous societies had extended families, communal child-rearing, different kinship structures. None was right. They were simply different ways of organizing human relationship. Yet we treat the nuclear family as natural and inevitable. None of this means we should immediately overturn everything. It means recognizing that what we've inherited is chosen. It means understanding that alternatives exist or existed. It means living with more awareness of what we're doing and why. It means evaluating our choices consciously rather than simply continuing them because they're familiar. The insight here is subtle but important. We are not trapped by nature. We are not locked into one way of being, but we are shaped by our own habits to the point where alternatives seem impossible. This is true at individual level, it's true at cultural level, it's true historically. We create arrangements, we live them out, they become us, we forget they were created, we treat them as inevitable. And then we struggle to imagine doing anything differently. But possibility remains, not to change everything, but to see our lives as chosen, to hold our patterns more lightly, to recognize them as particular to us, to our time, to our circumstances, to understand that in another time or place, things would be different, and to know that difference is not crisis. Difference is simply difference. And humans have always been able to adapt to difference. The deeper question isn't, why did 90% of human history never use a pillow? The question is, what else are we doing now that will seem equally strange to our descendants? What other habits are we building that we think are natural? What other systems are we creating that we believe are inevitable? What will future generations see as obvious choices that we treated as nature? This question doesn't demand answers, it demands awareness. It demands that we live more consciously, that we see what we do, that we recognize our choices, and from that recognition, a different kind of wisdom emerges. Not the wisdom to change everything, but the wisdom to understand what we're actually doing, to live more awake in our own lives, to be conscious participants rather than sleepwalking inheritors. Everything you've understood up to this point has been intellectual. Now it becomes something else. Now it becomes real. Your pillow is not just an object, it's a choice. It's a history. It's millions of decisions, all leading to this moment, all leading to you resting your head on something soft, on something shaped for you, on something that your body expects. You've inherited comfort. Generations before you chose comfort. They accumulated knowledge about rest. They innovated, they refined, all resulting in this pillow, this night, this rest. But you've also inherited something else. You've inherited a kind of fragility, a dependence on this arrangement, a lack of flexibility, a disconnection from older capacities. This too is inheritance. This too was chosen for you before you could choose. By people making decisions they thought were improvements. They were. And they weren't. Both things are true simultaneously. Your comfort is real. Your body actually rests better in this pillow than it would on stone. Your sleep is actually deeper with proper support. These improvements are genuine, but you've also become dependent on them. You've lost capacities. You've trained yourself into particular patterns. Your body now expects this setup. Without it, you struggle. This is not a judgment. It's simply what happened when people chose comfort and repeated it for generations. The paradox is this: you can appreciate the comfort while understanding the cost. You can be grateful for what you've inherited while seeing clearly what comes with it. You can choose to keep using your pillow. Enjoy it. Sleep better with it. Feel grateful for it while understanding that you've chosen consistency over flexibility, while knowing that your dependence on this arrangement is learned, not biological, while recognizing that in another context, in different circumstances, your body could do otherwise. This recognition doesn't demand change, but it changes everything. When you lie down tonight and settle onto your pillow, you will do it knowing this is a choice, knowing this is a particular arrangement of the world, knowing your body could adapt to different conditions, knowing that what feels necessary might simply be what's familiar. This knowledge sits with you as you rest. It doesn't diminish the comfort, it deepens it. You can feel the weight of your head on the pillow and understand that this sensation is connected to thousands of years of human history, to choices made in Egypt and Mesopotamia, to innovations in Europe and Asia, to industrial production, to marketing and advertising, to the particular time you live in, to the decisions of your parents and grandparents about how you should sleep. All of this is contained in the moment when your head meets the pillow, and you can feel at the same time the older capacity, the ancient memory carried in your muscles, the capacity to sleep on ground, the flexibility that lives beneath the modern training, the knowledge that if everything changed, if all the modern comfort disappeared, you would survive, you would adapt, you would rest. This capacity hasn't gone away. It's just been covered by layers of more recent learning. But the ancient strength remains. You are positioned at a particular point in history. You have access to comforts that most humans who ever lived never had. You sleep better than most people in most times. This is real. This is good. But you can hold this gratitude while also understanding what you've traded, what you've chosen, what you've let go of in pursuit of this comfort. This is where understanding becomes wisdom. Not the wisdom to change everything, but the wisdom to live consciously, to see your own life, to recognize your choices, to understand that what feels necessary might be learned, to know that habits are not fixed, to recognize that your body is more capable than you usually assume, and to live from that understanding. When you truly grasp this, not just intellectually, but in your body, in your bed, in the moment when your head meets the pillow, something shifts. Not in how you sleep necessarily, but in how you understand your own life. You are no longer sleepwalking. You are awake in your own existence. You are seeing what you do, why you do it, what it means. This awareness is the gift. Not that you must change everything, but that you understand you have choice, that the arrangements of your life are chosen, that you can evaluate them, that you can ask if they serve you, that you can decide consciously rather than simply continuing out of habit. This is not a burden, this is freedom. This is the freedom to see your own life clearly, to live it consciously, to make choices knowing what they involve. And from that consciousness, something true emerges, something that feels like coming home to yourself, something that feels like waking up to the fact that you've been here all along. The body we carry tonight is ancient. It evolved without pillows, it adapted to ground, it learned flexibility, it developed capacities we've nearly forgotten. But the sleeping world around that ancient body is much newer. Pillows and mattresses and climate control and darkness on demand. This is recent. This is chosen. This paradox matters. It means we're not trapped. We're not locked into modern ways, but we're also not enslaved to ancient ways. We have capacity from both. We live in both. We are neither ancient nor fully modern. We're at an intersection of two different ways of organizing sleep. We inherit both. We can draw on both. What we've actually learned is that bodies are flexible, that needs are partly learned, that what feels necessary might be chosen, that what feels natural might be recent, that comfort is real but not required, that adaptation is still possible, that our assumptions deserve questioning. Most importantly, we've learned to see our own lives, to see what we do, why we do it, what it means. This is the real education. Not changing everything, but being awake while we live. This understanding is an invitation, not a demand to change, but an invitation to awareness, to see your pillow as choice, to feel your comfort as something created, to understand your routines as selected, to live consciously in your own life. This is the real gift, not changing everything, but being awake while you live it. The body carries its history, both the ancient history of ground sleeping and the recent history of pillow sleeping. We live at the intersection of both. We can use our pillows and enjoy them while understanding what we've chosen. We can have comfort without anxiety about whether it's necessary. We can sleep well knowing we could sleep differently if we needed to. This paradox is the place of actual freedom. And when night returns again, when your head lowers toward that familiar cushion, perhaps the oldest question returns too. It rests quietly beneath all the comfort you have learned. What kind of sleep does the human body still remember? Not what it needs, not what it requires, but what it remembers. What ancient capacity sleeps beneath your modern comfort? What adaptation hides beneath your habit? What could your body still do if it needed to? These questions need no answer. They only need to be asked, quietly, in the darkness, while you rest.